So I will call the meeting to order. Members of the committee. Thank you. Are there any, well, first of all, please make sure you're signed in and mute your devices. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no presentations, there are no delegations. Phil Lambert. Oh, sorry, Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if we could move up the receipt of 6.3, which is a memo to clarify some of the issues around the plaza.
Right.
If we could receive that before we go into item 5.1, because I think it informs.
Which is 34.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're seconding that, Councillor Dart? Thank you. So why don't we discuss them both at once? Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor? Sure. Thank you. So we have that change to the agenda. And I'll call the question. The motion is on the screen. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And I'd also like a motion, please, that we have Mr. Phil Lambert make a presentation before 6.2. Councillor Dart, seconded. Seconder, Councillor Nunziata. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is PDSC 34 and PDSC 36. Could I have a motion, please, to approve both? Councillor Joyner, and a seconder, please. Councillor Mulroney. Any questions or comments to those two memos? Councillor Augustine.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This was sent to us because there were further questions from folks. Maybe I'm leading the speakers list here, but I think we should just what was proposed at budget, which is deferred until 2019. And so that we don't do it in 2018.
Proposed at budget, it was defeated at budget.
That was defeated at budget?
Correct. The amendment was defeated during the budget committee that we had on Thursday.
Okay, well, this is fresh here.
Let's have the clerk comment, please.
Thanks.
Through you, Madam Clerk. I believe that what our commissioner is suggesting is that $1.2 million has actually been approved in the 2017 budget, and that is all that we're planning on spending at this point in time. It's not committing council to any further monies for 2018 at this point. No other phases will be conducted other than phase 1, and this was already approved for the 2017 budget. I believe that's a clarification that Mr. Mastracci was trying to provide right. Council.
Councillor Augustine?
Yeah, my read on this, just for clarity, for example, it says the capital budget request for phase 2 will be brought forward as part of the 2018 budget process, but there's no obligation to approve the same. So right. That's what was done. I'd like to say that we don't do it in 2018, that we put it to 2019.
Well, let's...
if I can,
yes.
if I may. That's for phase 2. Phase 2, yeah, right, that's for phase 2. Right. Phase 1 has already been approved.
Correct.
Okay.
But the motion to amend so that phase 2 would come during the 2019 budget process was defeated on Thursday night during the budget review meeting.
Right, but Council's committee was looking for more information. I think it's still in order. Council hasn't made its determination yet, and now Council would be looking for what Planning Committee would want, especially given the additional information we have. So I'd like to make the motion here as well that we, especially given in light of this memorandum, that no obligation to approve the same. I think we should defer it to 2019.
Yeah, I don't think that's in order, Councillor. And the clerk is agreeing that it's not in order.
It's already been defeated. at the last council meeting, at the last budget meeting. Therefore, you can't bring that up again unless you want to
It's-
bring.
Yeah. I would argue as a point of order that it was defeated at committee pending additional information. We have the additional information today, and therefore, with that information, I'd like to make that. Council
order?
hasn't dipped its oar in water, so.
Point of order, I don't recall that it was defeated pending more information. I think it was simply defeated.
Correct, it was. So it is out of order. The clerk has agreed it's out of order. I agree it's out of order. It's not in order. Yes, Councillor Marshall.
Just because we're in order land right now.
Well,
Wasn't
no,
there an
ordered
amendment to
land,
fundamentally
preferably.
change the motion that we agreed to send to council? It was a fundamental change in the motion we sent,
On phase one?
and that should have been out of order.
Right. Are we talking about phase one?
Whatever, there was an amendment, you amended it. You stood and read it, and you tried to amend, and you fundamentally changed the nature of the motion, if I recall accurately. Now, I don't know if the acting
All right,
clerk was.
the clerk has a comment.
Through you, Madam Chair. At committee, last round, Councillor, I believe it was Councillor Maves, added a number 5 to
Correct.
this recommendation.
Right.
At council, Councillor Volpatti had, council struck out number 5, so we're back with number 4, which is what you see on the screen right now. What is also confusing the issue is the budget. So at the Budget Review Committee of the Whole, what was approved or what was defeated was that the Project HQ Landscape Master Plan of $1.2 million be removed from the 2018 capital budget.
And that was defeated.
That was defeated.
Yeah,
No,
yes. Well,
Not that part. That was defeated.
no. This was referred back to committee at council.
It was defeated at budget. So it stands, your motion is not in order. I'm asking, all right, you could if you wanted to. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The memorandum PDSC 36, I think is helpful in putting the perspective on the phasing and the amount of money that is already committed in this year's budget. So that this is really just authorizing that we proceed with the plan and to initiate a facilities plan to study areas for additional, so the study on the next steps. So the memorandum, I think, informs me of what I was, clarifications I was looking for. The motion before us is to tender phase 1, essentially, and start to initiate the facilities plan for the parking areas,
Right.
which may be, phase 2 at some point. So I support the motion that's in front of us. It lets us proceed with the money we've already committed to it in this year.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Councillor. So seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? We have 2 opposed. Thank you. Moving on to PDS 42, overview of the 2018 incentive review. And the director has some comments, I think. Acting director. Acting commissioner, but you are a director.
Commissioner, oh yeah, acting commissioner, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Just before we get into this, I'd like to make a bit of a clarification. In the report, there are 2 things that are mentioned. There are mentioned that it's recommended that the proposal for an audit to be done is referred to the audit committee. That referral to the audit committee is just to get approval to actually proceed with the conduct of the audit. And in another section in the report, it says that the findings of the audit committee of the audit will be reported back to council. The intention is that once the audit is completed, the findings of those audit will actually come back to Planning and Economic Development Committee for discussion to then look at the next steps that will be taken. So the full intention is that once we have completed the audit, that we'll be bringing a report back to Planning and Economic Development Committee with the audit findings and recommendations for moving forward, so the discussion can be had in this committee.
Right, so I hope that clarifies. There was some uncertainty about that. Councillor Timms.
So what I want to be clear is that this committee recommends to the audit committee that they do the audit. This does, the way this reads, it kind of leaves it up to the audit committee, up to the audit committee's decision. And at the very least, what I'd like to see is that this motion and council's motion that follows it recommends to the audit committee. I mean, I think the audit committee will get involved in the details of the audit, but it needs to be clear that this committee and council is recommending or directing the audit committee to do it. What's the staff, perhaps you can clarify for me, because be referred leaves the whole question to the audit committee as to whether they decide to do it or not, and then they come back to us and say, we're going to do it. So if you could clarify that for me, I'd like to maybe see the wording of item 2 changed.
Yes, through the chair for clarification, that is correct. We expect that the audit committee will agree to do it, and my understanding was it was just sort of a matter of putting it to them for approval to proceed. I don't have a problem with changing number 2 on that, to make that clear.
Okay, Councillor.
So the way it reads is that this report be referred to the audit committee for consideration. So I'd ask that this program be audited under the direction of the audit committee. I'm getting a lot of suggestions here.
Sorry.
Request the audit committee to do a value for money
Well,
audit.
let's have the clerk put something up on the screen, Councillor.
Or direct. Getting a lot of ideas here. Be directed to do.
So it's now on the screen, and 2 reads that the audit committee be directed to undertake, if we would all listen, then we wouldn't have to repeat everything again. Number 2 says now that the audit committee be directed to undertake a value for money audit of the incentive programs.
Could not have said it better myself, Madam Chair.
Undertake a process and value for money audit. And process.
Soon going to say it better myself.
Undertake a process. Yes. And a value for money audit of the incentive programs.
I believe that captures my intent, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Is that required as an amendment, or is that simply put that motion on the
Yes,
floor?
okay, so it's moved by you, Councillor Timms, and
Yep.
seconded by Councillor Dart. Any questions, comments? Councillor Nunziata. So we open another list here. Yes,
I do know that our lower tier partners are in the process of gathering feedback from their users of all these projects. They've distributed online surveys. They're getting dollar amounts, just to see what kind of money has been leveraged. So will staff at the region have that information in time? Is there, I know that information is being compiled right now at the local level, and hopefully that will be passed on. I'm just looking at the timing here, and if there's any impact on getting out the recommendations from regional staff before they get that information.
Acting Commissioner?
Through the chair, yes, I've spoken, Michelle and I have spoken extensively about how this audit is going to proceed, and I did inform him that having discussions with the municipal partners is going to have to form a big part of that, so that he can collect information, because a lot of these programs are joint programs between the region and municipality, so he understands that.
Okay, so I'm going to assume then a very thorough audit process when it comes to value for money is going to include a lot of the information that our lower tier partners will be providing. Do we need to inform our partners? Do they need a resolution of their local councils to pass on that information? I'm just curious as far as the access that the auditors will have to make sure that they get all the information.
Mr. Lambert, do you, oh, sorry, no, I thought you were going to answer. Don't move like that.
I'm just wondering, I mean, we're making this unilateral decision at this level, but it does involve our lower tier partners who have actually accessed this.
Right,
this
so we're
proposal.
making a unilateral decision about a review during which they will be engaged.
Yes, and that's, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
Yes, and I think, yes, staff is agreeing to that.
Okay.
They would be as a matter of course, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. At our last council meeting, we approved the audit committee meeting minutes, which indicated within those minutes that there was a work plan being put forward where staff were going to come forward with programs on a risk-based analysis to recommend to audit for review. When this recommendation goes to council, this would sort of be reconsideration of that direction that was already provided to staff and the audit committee. I think what you're trying to get here is that these programs need to be reviewed. I don't think it needs to go through the audit committee to do that. We have a list of value for money auditors that have already been okayed and approved, pre-approved list. You could basically say if this review, this value for money audit should be just a direction of staff to conduct it and to move ahead with it directly using one of those value for money audit companies. If staff comes back and says on a risk-based analysis that this particular programs or these don't fall into the criteria of what we've done, we've got a whole different discussion going on. So I have a problem with the wording of being directed to undertake a process review. The audit committee isn't undertaking any processes. It's actually being done in recommendations to council to do that. So you're basically just sending it to audit, then to send it back to council. I don't see why we wouldn't just proceed with it, direct staff to proceed with it, and use the new internal controls department to do that as a separate item, right?
Yes, Commissioner.
Through the chair, through this proposal, it's actually going to be ICOPS that is conducting the audit themselves. So my understanding in discussion with them was that this had to actually be put to the audit committee just to get approval for them to proceed to doing the audit themselves.
So
we don't intend to hire an external company to do this.
So again, we've already sort of approved the work plan, what we're going to do. If ICOPS wants to do it, then I think the direction is that council direct ICOPS to do that, because the audit committee is not, that's not basically how it works with respect to these processes. So I'm happy to have these particular programs reviewed. I think ICOPS could do it very well. However, this is just a convoluted way to get there. If this is a decision to do that we want to review these programs, then let's make the motion that council direct staff to review these programs through ICOPS. That's, yeah. We don't have to go through and do it a separate, take the separate step, which by the way, audit doesn't meet until after next council meeting, so we could get the approval now,
Right.
next week, otherwise we're waiting another 4 or 5 weeks out, so.
I'm going to, Frank, can you speak to this, please? Frank is with ICOPS, is that what we call it? It's a great name.
Sorry, I thought, through you, Chair.
Yes, welcome, Frank.
Mache, our director, will be joining us, but just to clarify, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, on October 31st, Councillor Quirk, we will be presenting our 2018 audit plan, and through discussions with Director Giles and Reno Mustachi, we have included this as part of our audit plan. And to answer a question from Councillor Nunziata, part of the audit program, although it's not necessarily in stone at this point, is to work with all the stakeholders, including the local area municipalities. We want to get started on this audit immediately in early 2018 because we anticipate it's going to be about an 8 to 9 month process. So we will be contacting the local municipalities. So I don't know the exact process, whether we have to go through audit committee, but it is part of our work plan that will be presented 2 weeks on Monday.
Right, and and if this is approved then at council, it will go to the October 31st meeting.
Well, it'll go to October 31st meeting and then council afterwards, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Frank, we haven't seen what programs are we going with ICOPS? Is that what we're doing? Okay,
Yeah.
so ICOPS,
ICOPS.
we haven't seen that presentation. They were going to come back with programs. If they've already decided this is one that they want to do, again, I think the cleaner thing is to say, direct them to include this specifically as part of the plan, because if you bring the plan to audit committee could turn around and say, we're doing things differently, or we don't want to agree with that, we don't agree with that, because on a risk-based process, that's not where we want to go. If this is one that is important to this committee and is important to council, I say the wording should be changed to say that this program be part of the ICOPS review, and that it's done directly at council, so it goes forward. It's approved at council, and then that's already ratified for when it comes to audit beforehand. So Frank and Shade and their team can say, this has to be done because council's already ratified this.
Yeah, so that's friendly. Is it friendly? Who proposed the amendment? Councillor Timms and Dart. We're considering that friendly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It sounds like we're going in the same direction and we're semantics about
Well, we want to
the
clarify.
process. So if council directs the audit committee to undertake the process, and then audit committee receives the ICOPS proposal and has this recommendation or this direction from regional council, the job at audit committee is pretty simple. We have the direction on that one. We see the rest of the things you want to do. We've been directed to proceed on this one, and we'll look at the rest of the ones that are, and then the committee will come back and say, these are the rest of the ones, in addition to the particular audit that the council directed us to do. So it's a clear, to my mind, it's simply a clear direction to audit committee. I'm sure there's more than one audit that will be in the work plan, but I just want to be clear, this one is directed to the audit committee to undertake the process. So
And this will be approved or
I
not?
like it just the way it's worded, Madam Chair.
Approved or not at regional council. Councillor Quirk, are you satisfied with it?
I have a concern with a motion that directs a committee to do anything, because it presupposes what the democratic process of that committee will do. If it is for staff to include this as part of the process, that is one thing. But for the council to direct a committee to do something specifically, I find is counterintuitive. I also think of all the committees, the audit committee should be the most independent and not directed by council or through recommendations. So I'll be voting against it for that reason. I have no problem supporting it when it comes to the audit committee through the regular process.
Well, let's just hope it passes the audit committee, I guess. Any other, Councillor Joyner on this?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I initially pushed my button simply because I was not clear. I was maybe a little thick on this, and in the last couple of minutes here, I've been able to understand that all of the programs that are listed there on, I believe, page 3, starting with Smarter Niagara Incentive Program, will be status quo for the year 2018, which is good because that is going to help the local area municipalities do their budgeting for the year 2018. And I've also understood that, so we'll go through this audit review, and then the findings will come at the end of 2018 so that we can be prepared for our 2019 local area municipalities, whether some of us are sitting around here or not sitting around here. That will be decided by the electorate in the election in October of 2018. I guess my biggest question that I want to know is that I go back down to the background scope and objectives here, and it reads very clearly to me. So I would just like some back history as to how this actual report got here. What was the feelings around why we need to audit this? Is it just simply because it's the thing to do these days? Audit's a very special word in the news, or what was the background?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. The CEO would like to comment here.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Joyner. So we have certain programs that are undersubscribed, and we have certain programs that are oversubscribed. And we've been hearing different variety of feedback from our local area municipalities. So we thought that is what initiated the discussion, but I'll go to the director for more details.
Director.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, those points are correct. As I think the report points out, there are a number of programs, and a lot of these programs were developed at different periods of time for different purposes, and they, I guess, in the past were distributed around different departments that were running them, and through different restructuring, a lot of the programs are now in sort of three distinct areas. But as a result of this, in terms of actually helping to manage the delivery of the programs, they all have very different structures. Some of them aren't very clear on what their objectives were. So what the initial idea was, first what we need to do is understand what we're trying to get out of the existing programs and what they were designed for, and if they're actually as relevant now as they were before. Then so that was the process side of it. So we just wanted to understand, internally we have to understand what the processes are for all of these programs. Then the second part that was added on was the value for money, and just to say, okay, well, if we're going to start to review these programs, and if we're going to look at how we move them forward, we actually need more information than just how they function internally and how we can process them. So we thought we would probably need more information to make a better decision on what value we're getting out of these programs, and can that be demonstrated, because we know there are programs that are undersubscribed and some that are oversubscribed. So what is actually the status of those programs, and how can we get more information to make better decisions on how we move forward?
Okay, so thank you for that. So would you agree with me that perhaps maybe in reviewing these for 218, that are we potentially handcuffing economic development, because a lot of these have to deal with economic development in the Niagara region? How are they going to sell some of these programs going forward, knowing the potential they're under review? Or should I be looking at it the other way, that economic development now can take a lot of these programs and talk to the local area municipalities and stakeholders and be able to say, maybe now is the time or you should be looking at this because they may not be here in 219. How does economic development play into this entire review?
Yes, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. We actually had a meeting with all of the CIP communities, along with the economic development offices and the planning offices and finance about 3 weeks ago, to discuss this and some other issues. The point of that meeting was to make sure that all stakeholders understand what's happening for 2018. So the messaging is clear when we're talking to potential clients or companies that are looking to come into the region, because the point of the review isn't necessarily to stop programs per se. It could be to enhance them or change them to make them more relevant. So the key message in all of that, from an economic development perspective in particular, is everybody who has a program needs to be saying the same thing, or at least understand the process. And that was part of that messaging of that meeting. So we're working through that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My last question is, for instance, if you look at number 2, Public Realm Investment Program, I am one mayor who happens to actually think that this program is underfunded. When will be my opportunity to actually say that the Niagara region for the 2018 budget should be putting more money into that program, not less? Do I still have that opportunity leading up to the 218 budget?
Who is going to answer that? Yeah,
I'll take that. Yes, I guess through the budget process, there's always the option of putting that forward.
right,
Okay, just wanted to make sure I had that opportunity. Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you. Just to the amendment, I think, which is where we are. Just to build on what Councillor Quirk said, although he's now voting against it, unfortunately, but he does want it to go forward. I just think it could be solved by saying, and that staff be directed to undertake a review process.
And that staff
And then
be
that's it.
directed?
So-
Councillor Timms, does that satisfy you?
No, Madam Chair, the motion is there. The audit committee is doing value for money audits for us. They're going to have a whole process laid out. We're just asking through democratic process of this committee and the democratic process at Regional Council that the audit committee be directed to undertake a process to review and value for money audit on the incentive programs. It's as simple as that.
Right, and the audit committee could refuse.
No, well, the audit committee would have to go back to council and say, we don't want to for some reason.
Well,
But
but
they've
they
been
could do
directed
that.
to, and we were heard.
Councillor Augustine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment that it says, and that the, whatever, ICOPS, whatever it is, and that staff be directed.
So you would
So
change
that
it
it's the
by,
internal audit staff be directed to undertake.
okay. So leaving out the audit committee,
Right.
so that ICOPS be directed,
Thank you.
right. Tony, you second that? All right. So that's the amendment to the amendment. It'll be on the screen in a moment, and then you can speak to it. I think we all understand where we want to go. We just want to do it in the proper way. Actually, Anne Marie suggested that about 10 minutes ago, so she's way ahead of us, as usual. So it now reads that internal control staff be directed to undertake a process review and value for money audit of the incentive programs. Councillor Augustine? Councillor Quirk? Yes, we'll now have a second list to the list. Yeah. So you want to speak to this particular part, Councillor? To the amendment or the amendment? Well, then why don't you speak now? Please choose some other language, like change.
Yeah, okay. Is the issue that we, as a council, cannot direct the audit committee to do an audit? Is that, do I understand Councillor Quirk, I believe, is the chair, if that's his belief? Or alternatively, the language the way it was, and it'll be ratified by council instructing the audit committee. Now, the audit committee, I would think, would have the ability to come to council and say, I don't think we want to do that. It may require 2/3, but do we have the authority to do so? And I think we can. I appreciate the intent of the motion, but I don't think we have to do anything. So I won't be supporting the amendment on this occasion.
The amendment to the amendment?
The amendment to the amendment, unless it's amended by the amendment.
Thank you very much for that. Did anyone else wish to speak to the amendment Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair, and I would suggest to you, this body, that it would be out of order for us to direct any body that can make a decision to do anything. It would be the same as council saying, I direct planning committee to approve something. And then we would all have to come here in our capacity of planning committee and vote for it because council's directed us to it. You're actually directing another committee, a subcommittee, or a direct committee of council you're presupposing the outcome of a democratic process. So you either refer it to the committee for their recommendation, or you refer it to, or you direct staff to do something and present it to the committee. it's inappropriate to direct another committee to do something, especially when you don't have the majority of those members here. So I just, if you do go down that road, it makes for some very interesting precedents that we'd be setting, and council could just presuppose the outcome of any committee meeting by directing them to support or approve something.
Right,
So
thank you.
I would actually suggest it would be out of order to do otherwise.
Thank you, Councillor. It sounds like we're engaged in an argument, but we're going to turn to our CAO who has a solution, I hope.
Thank you, Chair. A possible suggestion, I don't know if it's a solution.
Possible solution.
That you add subject to audit committee approval. So you're directing staff to undertake the review. They'll start preparing for that, but it's subject to audit committee approval.
Now, is that to this, to the amendment, or the original amendment?
I'm lost in the debate, so I'm just looking at the one before me.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would suggest to you that the intent of this motion is to make this a requirement of ICOPS, right? So I think if you say make it subjected to audit committee approval, I think you are now then entering that other level of thing which we're trying to avoid. Right. So I agree. I appreciate what the CAO is trying to suggest and recommend here, but I'm just saying that the process has to be respected.
All right, I'm going to call the amendment to the amendment. Enough already. All in favor? And the amendment to the amendment. Any opposed? Raise your hands high. 2 opposed. Thank you. Now going back to the amendment, because that's carried. The motion, no, we have another amendment on the floor. All right, let's wait till we see it, please. Yes. We're getting there, I think. Yes? Yes, what is it, Councillor?
It's just appeared to me, and I could be way off base here, but where is the FTZ program? How come it's not on here? Is that because it's a federal program, or the free trade zone? How come that's not part of the? I see the Gateway Economic Zone and Center. Is that part of the?
The director has a.
Through Madam Chair, yeah, it's a federal program that's funded federally. We don't have any regional contribution.
Okay. Just wasn't sure. Thank you.
Please, before they think of something else. All right. Okay, right. But that's the way it was. Yes. We're just fixing this up now. Okay, so that's what we're voting on, the motion as amended. And you have a comment on the whole motion? Yes, Councillor Augustine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. So number 1 here says that a review of the regional incentive programs outlined in the report be endorsed by council. I presume that that's alluding to the chart on page 4. The director has already spoken about this in terms of but I just wondered if it needed to be clarified. So it says here under phase 2, it says report to council on audit results. Can we just add the word and committee, or committee and council?
Yes.
Just to clarify that, because the resolution number 1 says no, and then somebody 6 months from now go, no, it's got to go to council.
Right, okay.
You just say to committee and council.
And that is at the end of 1.
No, not there. It says as outlined in the report.
As outlined in the report.
The report doesn't have that, so.
In the body of the report, thank you.
And maybe that can just be done as administrative thing, so we don't have to vote
Thank
on
you,
it.
Councillor.
Thanks.
Anything else, Councillor Augustine?
I think, thank you. The commissioner did speak about this, and I think when we talked about it, I think he was optimistic in the timeline. I think this is a much more realistic timeline to run through the programs. And more importantly, I think it does provide that certainty that Councillor Joyner, Mayor Joyner spoke about for the development community as they plan their projects. it's important to have that certainty going forward. So, I'm pleased with this. It's important to retool things. I would hope as well that members of the Smarter Niagara Steering Committee can be part of that, at least part of the
I'm sure
audit
they will
portion,
be, yeah.
so that, because a lot of they know the incentives a little bit, not better than those of us around here, but they use them, et cetera. So I'm hoping at some point that they can be involved in that process. And involved there, they're part of the group of industry that's, and the business community that's involved. So that's why it's important to have their involvement.
Thank you.
I'm supportive of this. It's a better timeline, more realistic.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair Caslin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's been addressed by my colleague here, Councillor Quirk.
Oh, he always helps me too. That's good.
He's very helpful.
He is indeed. Any other question? Oh, now we have, all right, Timms, Councillor Timms.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. My concern was addressed, and I lost the vote on the amendment, so this is clear and direct, and that's fine. I have no further objections to the motion.
Nothing lost, Councillor. Councillor Augustine, Councillor Quirk? Councillor Campion? That's gone. Councillor Nunziata?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just specifically, when you talk about the oversubscription to the SNP program, now we know what's allotted for 2018. It's in the motion. It's going to be continued. So we know what that amount is. But during the budget process, I was under the impression that we would have an opportunity to perhaps top it up, move that amount up, make an evidence-based decision, see what the value proposition is for this particular program. I'm just curious, how would we do that through the budget process now without first having that information or that report come to us?
Right. Do you have an answer on the CAO?
Through Chair to Councillor Nunziata, as we've done in the past when we are tracking the programs and we see that we're nearing oversubscription or we're going to surpass oversubscription, we prepare a report. We either recommend a budget adjustment or in some cases we've put a stop to it, that we're oversubscribed. So there's options, and that we would take those options to committee and council to consider.
Time frames? Because I'm just thinking at our lower tier municipalities. So I mean, with respect to the SNP program, they know what the budgeted amount is, and I believe it's 600,000 for 2018. We've already proven that that's a very oversubscribed program. Perhaps it would be prudent for this council maybe to top it up a little bit more. But I don't want to just willy-nilly throw a number at it without first having that empirical data come forward.
My understanding, Chair, to Councillor Nunziata, is that the acting commissioner is looking at in order to present some budget adjustments for 2018.
Okay.
So in our staff budget deliberations, we've identified this, and we're looking at adding more budget dollars to those incentive programs.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall? No. Oh, that is good. No further speakers? Calling the vote on the motion as amended. And then what? Yeah. Oh, right. So I'm going to call the motion to amend the main motion, which is number 2. All in favor? Any opposed? And it's carried unanimously. And I'm calling the motion on the main motion as amended. Yes. Can you sign me in?
The vote is open.
Just a second. No. A little late. Yes, the clerk will kindly, very nicely remove Councillor Campion. Sorry. Not permanently, just for this occasion. Okay, thank you very much for that, everyone. Moving on to PDS 40, the Public Realm Investment Program Achievements. And I'm going to call Khaldun to the podium, who has a presentation. And meanwhile, could I have a motion to approve PDS 40 now so we can discuss both? Councillor Height, Councillor Dart. Yes, Khaldun, welcome, and please proceed.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Madam Chair. This is hopefully a good news story, and on behalf of my team, I'm excited to showcase the projects that have been completed through the Public Realm Investment Program, or PRIP. As you know, the program was first launched in 2016, and it's now in its second year of providing funding for streetscape enhancement projects, essentially along regional roads. The program has been essentially well received by the local essentially communities because I think it's helped to enliven and add value with impactful and transformative essentially projects in as far as their communities are concerned. So the purpose of this presentation is to showcase a few of the built projects that have been completed to date. So just a little bit of background. So the program has committed to funding 11 projects, and essentially in 2016, the funding was provided for 7 of those projects, and in 2017, funding for 4 projects. And this presentation will feature the 4 completed projects so far. So the first project is in West Lincoln, and it's on Regional Road 20. And the regional contribution was $42,500, and that's in the report. And this was part of phase 1 of an ambitious enhancement project by West Lincoln called Building a Vibrant Tomorrow. The enhancement contributed to extending improvements that were done in past years, particularly, essentially in particular at the intersection of Cranborough and 20. So this was the condition. The shadow of the tree is not helpful, but the condition before is on your left, and the completed condition is essentially on the right. And the enhancement included paving, street furniture, banners, the burial of a hydropole, and tree planting. This is another view of the finished work, and I think essentially the finished work transforms and updates the look of the downtown. The streetscaping also visually unifies and creates essentially an attractive and comfortable, business-friendly environment for the residents and visitors to Smithville. The second project that I'd like to feature is 2 sites in the town of Lincoln. The contribution for both sites in total was $60,000, and this is the first site. It's essentially on Regional Road 18, or essentially Ontario Street. and in front of the LCBO. In recent years, there's been a lot of investment especially in Beamsville. This is an example directly across the street where private development has invested in the streetscaping and, of course, essentially with new buildings. And directly across the street, you have what is an underutilized and essentially not very attractive condition where cars are parking essentially right up to the edge of the sidewalk there. And on the right side, you see the finished product, and hopefully it's a lot more clear in your reports. But the finished product is essentially as like a planter. So it used that space that you see there and created a planter with some seating and essentially drought-tolerant plants that can that are also flowering plants. And here's another view of that. So I think in the end it's a pretty significant improvement, and the essentially region worked really closely with staff to staff from the local community to design and prepare this. And it was done prior to the 1st of, I think the 1st of July of this year. So it helped to enliven that for Canada Day. The second site is on King Street, and essentially another similar kind of scene where you have cars essentially parked right up to the sidewalk, and again, working closely with staff, we prepared a concept, which you see on your lower left there, and the concept was turned into a detail design, and the end product, as you see here, is a really unique solution that created a planter. We took the benches that were on close to the curb and placed them further back so that they wouldn't be interfering with how people get in and out of cars. There is parking essentially along that stretch, and we've had really good feedback from the property owner about that. And this is another view. Of course, in time, all of those plants will grow, and we'll do a better job at screening the vehicles. In behind the benches, essentially not pictured here, but it came as a later installation, is a fence to provide us a barrier between the cars and the benches. The third project I'd like to feature is one that's essentially in Welland, and this was a project that I brought to this committee last year as a concept, working closely with the essentially the City of Welland. This is the end result, so pretty close. And this is the condition before, and this is the condition after. So essentially it's a number of improvements, street furniture, paving, bannering, new sidewalk, and essentially all of this helps to create a seamless condition between the Market Square project, which was also done at the same time, and the sidewalk and streetscape. So it's there's no barrier, there's no differentiation. This is an important entry into that market square. Essentially, that contribution was around 42,000 as well. The last project that I'd like to feature is in West Lincoln. So this is the only project that's been completed through the 2017 program. And it consists of essentially landscaping the newly created parking lot, which was a partnership between the church, the region, and the township. And you can see that it included some succeeding and a unique placemaking feature, the sign, that essentially we worked with a sign maker to take essentially a profile of the CPR station and turn that into a sign. So this was done essentially by us here at the region, and of course working closely with the township. I think what this shows is that it shows, it's a good example of the fruition or completion that you see from planning. So the top corner there is the urban design manual that was created by the township in 2016. We took that direction, we created the sign, and the sign was built and installed this year. So it's a really good example of that continuation that you see through the projects. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you very much, Khaldun, for that. A very successful program, I take it.
Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Joyner?
Chair. I would just like to express my gratitude to the Niagara region. Khaldun and the planning staff, development staff has done an excellent job. The Niagara region staff and the Township of West Lincoln planning and development staff have worked shoulder to shoulder on both projects. We're very, very much appreciative. I would just like to point out that, this project that is before you, this completed project for the 217 PRIP dollars, was a major partnership between not only the township and the region, but also a local church, Smithville United Church. Also, there is Fort there for the teenagers. Also, Port Cares is also there, and they're located inside of the church. So, and the other group that it was able to help out was also the Niagara EMS too as well. That is, their location is located just to the east of this parking lot. So it was a tremendous partnership going forward. And the beauty of this is that we were able to use our previous studies that the township has completed and to help out the region planning department in order to come up with things such as the signage here. So it says right there, the Township of West Lincoln, this was part of our Smithville Urban Design Manual. So we took portions of that manual and incorporated and helped out the planning department in coming up with this. So I am thrilled by this work, and this all came about, this project here is because the Niagara region is doing an environmental assessment on Regional Road 20. And we want to incorporate bike lanes onto Regional Road 20, as we do all regional roads across Niagara. And what the region was going to have to do was to expropriate some land in order to get those bike lanes. Well, we didn't want to do that. We wanted to come up with a solution, and this is the solution, is building a municipal parking lot for the people and the residents of West Lincoln and downtown Smithville, as well as for the people who go to Smithville United Church on Sunday. So thank you so much. It's a great partnership, and I hope to continue with the PREP program.
Thank you. I'll just bring to the attention of the committee, we're also discussing the report. The ask is for a further $250,000 in the 2018 budget because the program is so successful, as well as receiving the information. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Khaldun, for your presentation. And I know you've worked hand in hand with our partners in Fort Erie as well. So part of your role and part of your responsibility is you've actually been involved in the planning of the Region of Niagara campus plan that we've had opportunity to see over the past, I'd say, month.
Yes.
So part of the public realms, that's what we would be investing here at our own building, correct?
I would say so. It's not part of.
Not part of the
yeah.
funding envelope, but
Yes.
it's part of the same concept, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I had a quick question from a private business owner on one of our regional roads. His concern was about leveling the playing field, where you have opportunities in areas of municipalities that have approved secondary plans. They have a BIA to support. And he seemed to think that some of the business owners along our regional corridors that don't have a secondary plan in place or don't have a BIA don't have access to the same kind of incentive programs. So I needed to pass on some information to this private business owner, because one of the opportunities that I told him about was perhaps there would be an opportunity under the public realms funding. How would a private business owner tap in to public realms funding, if at all, in order to improve the streetscape or the hardscape in front of his business?
Through the chair. The way that it works is that, first of all, that the program requires a matching contribution.
Okay.
The second requirement is that there should be basically that there is a maintenance commitment. Okay, so essentially all the features that I've presented today have come with a maintenance agreement between the region and the local municipality.
Okay.
So someone's got to take care of these things, and the way that it would work for a private business owner would be that they would have to convince their local municipality to engage with us, the region. They would have to come up with the funding so that there is a matching funding, and that they would have to commit to maintaining that aspect.
Okay, so following up on that, and I think last year was the first rollout of this program. I remember I made the comments then that there had to be an opportunity for the private sector or the non-for-profit sector to possibly have an opportunity to tap into these funds. So in the absence of a municipal partner, and we're talking about a public funding opportunity, would there be opportunities under the terms of reference of this program to have a private-public partnership or a non-for-profit public partnership under this program?
Yeah, so based on that information that you gave us essentially last time, the 2017 program was created with a feature, and it actually provided more points in the evaluation criteria for projects that involved partnerships. So if essentially if a local municipality was able to partner with, for instance, a BIA or another organization, or even a local business owner,
okay,
then they would receive, in fact, extra points, and they would receive priority funding because of that. And so, but in the end, the relationship has to be a partnership between the region and the municipality.
Okay, so, and I appreciate those answers. When you talk about priority funding, that's a good thing. What about priority location? Regional roads are pretty long, and if the opportunity that you have a private business owner that wants to invest his money in order to partner and leverage funds under this program, is there an opportunity for him to say, I'll do it, but I want it right here in front of my business?
Yeah, so the criteria that essentially we developed do have locational criteria that, where points are ascribed based on the location. So, if it's a busy intersection, if there's transit, if there are essentially projects nearby that can capitalize on the investment, all of those things are factored in that evaluation, and it's hard to speak on this without knowing exactly what the location is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
but but we would still take whatever application and run it through that evaluation criteria so that,
Okay.
you know, it's a fair process and,
Sure.
and we can identify which projects received funding, you know, especially with the limited amount that the program had, you know, it really called on us to be careful as to which projects we funded because we really wanted them to be impactful.
Okay, all right. Regardless, though, this particular business owner or any business owner, any private sector enterprise would have to, at the very least, partner with the host municipality in order to put forward the application.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
okay,
correct.
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be pleased to put the motion on the floor if it's not already there.
It is.
All right, who is the mover and seconder?
Height and, well, we did have a seconder. Councillor Height, I think it was Councillor Dart that you seconded this,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, great, and I do want to support the motion. I think this is the public realm investment that we should be spending money in. The report on page 2 says that by recommending 250, and we will in effect create the baseline budget for this after 2018 will be $500,000 a year for this public realm investment. And so this is exactly the kind of request and pressure that's going to be on our 2018 budget that I was concerned about when I voted against the 1.6 million being given to the provincial community college, it was Niagara College. This is, we are going to be considering 6 times this amount in the 2018 budget in order to give Niagara College, a provincial institution, $1.6 million. This is the kind of project that is our line of business, is where we should spend our money. And so I'm quite supportive of this. But with these kind of quests in mind, is why I said let's not do, give money to a provincial institution.
Right.
It was 1.6 million. It's either 3 years worth of this program or 6 times the $250,000 boost we're giving this program. So, let's stick to our knitting. Let's do this, and hopefully I'll make that argument when we come to budget time, considering the 1.6 million to Niagara College.
You want to link the two. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Building on Mr. Annunziata's comments, the requirement is that to be on a regional road, but are there also zoning requirements? It has to be within a certain area district, like central business district, or if there was already a CIP designation and plans are, can you piggyback this program with the possibility of CIP works as well?
Yes, through the chair, yes, those criteria are all part of that evaluation criteria that we essentially put all the projects through. So they, there is criteria that adds or that assigns points, if you will, to projects that are, for instance, if they're in a BIA or a CIP or if they're essentially adjacent to another investment that's happening and that kind of thing.
What points do you consider as being very positive that would help put you at the top of the scale as opposed to something else?
I don't have it in front of me, but to get a pass for funding, I believe it had to score 80 or more out of 100. So it was.
What criteria helps you score higher than other, perhaps lesser criteria?
Well, okay, so if it's in a if it's in an area where there are essentially manifold benefits, so if it's in a downtown where for instance, the placement of a bench or a bus shelter can benefit more people than placing that infrastructure, for instance, in a rural area, right? So the location of where something goes is very important because it helps us decide its value, and then it also allows the local municipality to make a justification for its maintenance. So you know, a bench on a rural road, for instance, versus a bench in a downtown, that bench will actually be used by many more people in a downtown setting, of course, and you know, it makes that maintenance argument essentially a lot easier.
And it's matching contributions, so it's 50/50?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. I didn't quite understand initially when Councillor Annunziata was speaking, and I clued in, so I appreciate him raising that issue. And I would think that if a business owner in a local municipality like Pelham or West Lincoln or whatever were to approach and say, I'd like to partner with you on this, then maybe there can be a partnership agreement between the municipality, the city or town or township, and then applying to the region together. So maybe that's something that business owner can do. And I think if a business owner came to Pelham Council and said, we have some funding here we'd like to do, perhaps you can kick in some funding, and then the region kicks in some funding, and all of a sudden it's one big happy family and we can get some things done. So I appreciate what Councillor Annunziata raised. So thank you for that. Councillor Timms raised an interesting issue. He always looks for an opportunity to talk about the points that he's most interested in. I think I'm sure I will look forward to Councillor Timms not voting for the park in front of the headquarters here at the region, because that's for Brock students and that's provincial responsibility. And I think maybe I'll look for that consistency.
Can we just stick to the subject at hand, Councillor, please?
I'll look for that well, you allowed the councillor to talk about Niagara College, so I'm going to talk about Brock. So I look forward to the councillor having that consistency. The real reason, Madam Chair, I wanted to talk about this was...
No, not to you, that was Councillor Timms.
Thank you.
Sorry, please. Proceed if it's on topic.
The real reason is because, and I think this will form part of the value for money audit that we're doing. This will form part of the discussion that Councillor Annunziata just had. The real reason is because this type of program creates wealth in the community. It creates value in the community, and there are spillover effects. I had the pleasure of touring with Mayor Joyner in West Lincoln a couple of weeks ago, and he showed me around his community with pride, and rightly so, with a number of the changes that have been supported by the region and a number of the other activities that are going on in West Lincoln. These types of investments create wealth in the community. It encourages growth and change, along with the community improvement plans that we have for facade improvements and signage that Khaldoon spoke about, etc. So I'm very supportive of this, Madam Chair, and I think it's a great lens for us to look at other initiatives, be they parks or be they funding of regional, colleges, etc. It's a good lens. Does it create wealth in our community? Does it create employment? Does it add to the activity here, or is it something nice to look at? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Seeing no further speakers, yes.
Understanding it's $250,000
Currently.
increased for an overall budget envelope of $500,000. That's what I understand. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could that properly be reflected in that motion?
Just that. Request increased funding, request of $250,000, representing $500,000 in total for this program.
Correct.
Comma, right. Which is right. Thank you for that. I think that's friendly. Seeing no further questions?
Recorded
all-
vote, Madam Chair?
A recorded vote, please. All in favor?
Recorded.
Recorded.
The vote is open.
Thank you, carried unanimously. And moving on to a consent item for information. It's ED 12, the quarterly update report. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Edgar? To move this report, the quarterly report. And Councillor Height seconding that. Any questions or comments? All in favor? And that's carried. And now I'll call Mr. Lambert, please, to the podium to discuss or to present information respecting the consideration, no, not that. Sorry, where am I? The Real Estate Research Study, PDS 44. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to present the final report at PMA today and to have a bit of fun. You know, I thought, what is one of my favorite things? Well, Dave Letterman's top 10. If you guys remember that. We have no band here, though. We had to cut back.
You could sing, Phil.
I could. The presentation would be much shorter. Yeah, there you go. Pat, you take away. All right. Thanks. So you'll probably remember we had PMA Andy Brother Group here late last year, and they did a great job doing some market research for us. What it actually included was doing 2,400 surveys to new homeowners. Then we followed that up with focus groups. We also sent out a home builder and developer survey to all of NHBA, and also direct invites to 36 groups, some of them being from out of Niagara and some from being in Niagara. We're really focused on what are the factors that drive home ownership in Niagara, and what are the factors that drive builder and developer attraction to Niagara. This was really building on our positive industry relationships, and also we had a real one-team focus here where we had all the lead from the growth priority projects. So we had the global attractiveness as well as the youth retention and economic development working as a steering group to make this a success. And I can't leave out communications because believe me, I couldn't come up with a fancy PowerPoint like this. They were really helpful. So without any further ado, number 10, 91% of homeowners surveyed were likely to recommend Niagara region to family and friends. That's great word of mouth, recognition and recommendation. They talked about the great environment, amenities that we have here. And one of the things I heard from the focus group was, well, this is a place where kids can play hockey in the streets. Number 9, attracting young professionals to the Niagara region should be a priority. So this is very consistent with our youth retention project, something that we're working on right now. And throughout our focus groups, we actually had some young professionals at the night session there, and their drive was for quality home ownership, what they actually wanted to buy, but still could commute to their job. The other part we heard was, driving until they qualify, and they're excited about the new home or housing opportunities around the GO station at Casablanca. Number 8, builders and developers rank their experience marketing lots and homes as 5.7 out of 10. Good news is that's a pass. But it really focused on, this is consistent across the board wherever you are. They want expedited approvals. They don't like to spend a lot of time through the development approval process because it costs time and money. And the region and municipalities, together, we got to focus on improvements for the approval process and being development ready. We're implementing the pre-consultation, which has been a success, but we need to do more. We heard that they need lots to build on, so that means we need to be proactively planning so we can be development ready. The most positive thing we heard was 100%, all of them said they would gladly take an opportunity in Niagara if it presented itself. Number 7, builders and developers are 3 times more likely to see expedited approvals as an incentive than reduced development charges. So building on what it is stated, delays in the development approval process is a chronic and consistent industry concern. When PMA was here, they provided an example of, I believe in the GTA, where there was 12 years between purchasing a piece of land and getting it to the market. And they're carrying that cost. So from a business decision, it's difficult for them. So again, we got to focus on planning for growth. It's important work, but it's also labor intensive. We need to respond to complete communities, appropriate density, and quality design. Some good examples of what we've done well recently is the Prudhoms in partnering up with the town of Lincoln and getting the secondary plan working with them to create a great community vision, and then the developer can come in and they're going to be able to make an application for a subdivision as opposed to an official plan amendment, a zoning amendment. Number 6, Niagara Region development charges compared favorably to surrounding areas. Even with the recent increase of, this is for single family homes of about 5,000, we're still at the lower end for Niagara, Blue is Niagara communities. And just a quick bit of research showed that the municipalities that we're comparing against, they're going to be going through their own process for looking at development charges, and chances are it's not going to go down. Number 5, new homeowner survey did not have a high ratio mortgage, being less than 20%. So 50% there had over 21%. Our survey didn't actually go beyond 20%. We thought that would be unusual, but it would have been interesting to see if there was something else. What that represents is there's good value, but it also represents that they'll have spending money as well. Number 4, Niagara Region has a strong new home market geared towards empty nesters and retirees. PMA warned us about this. They said you don't want to be just a one-faceted market. There's some concerns with that. However, earlier this year, we did have economists here, and they actually suggested that this group brings with them savings and a pension, which they'll spend, and they don't require a job. They do generate the need for more services for health and tourism, so there's a potential to provide new jobs and bring in younger people to fill this. Number 3, make residential development a priority. So development doesn't just happen. It must be proactively planned for, promoted, and managed. So there is a lot of hard work to getting that done, but the more we can do to be development ready, the quicker development can make it through the process. And then the quicker development makes it through the process, that's when we actually get a return on our investment for the payment of development charges and a higher assessment. Number 2, affordable real estate was ranked the top reason for choosing to move to Niagara, with enjoyable amenities and community safety as second and third. So what we heard loud and clear through our focus groups was that the overriding reason for choosing Niagara was home pricing. They could buy the home they desired, even if they didn't work in the area. The location, proximity to the GTHA, family and friends, close to the border, the USA. Also, we heard about the surprise of the climate, the banana belt phenomenon, warmer weather, wineries, golf courses, casinos, the nature, and safe and friendly communities. So that was all positive. What we did here, though, is public transit was felt to be poor. However, Council's acting on that with the IMT project. And number 1, Pat, can you give me a drum roll? Thank you. Number 1, focus on marketing Niagara to prospective residences. So This was consistent with the themes of youth attraction and global attractiveness to gain alignment with other community stakeholders like Brock and Niagara College, because we're all reaching out to the market to try to attract people here. So our plan is to do this together and collaborate. Economic Development is doing a Why Niagara website. They're planning that, and they're also putting in plans for a strategy for youth retention and employment. And this marketing plan is going to go in place or be implemented in 2018. It was funny, when we met with the homeowner focus groups, what we heard was some people happened across Niagara, and when they found it, they fell in love, and people making decisions over a weekend to purchase a property, which is relatively unheard of, but they were very happy with it. And so based on that story, we could do a better job of telling Niagara and attracting Niagara in a strategic focus. A good example of this is actually the Empire Legacy development off of Highway 406 and Merritt in the city of Thorold. They've taken out a column in the Toronto Life, and they've put in an Empire Legacy advertisement of saying, move to Niagara, move to Thorold, there's great opportunities here. And they basically explained all the great things that are happening. So that leads to some of our media relations campaign. So we are working on a fulsome media relations campaign to share this with media platforms outside of Niagara. We're really going to be pitching the affordability and the high quality of life here. And we anticipate that coverage to be done shortly, October and November. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
And we have some questions here. Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation. It's fairly thorough. But the first, one of your first slides, you referenced the Niagara real estate market, a real estate board. Did you, in your survey, include the Hamilton Real Estate Board that encompasses West Lincoln and Grimsby?
Through you, Madam Chair, what we did is we reached out to the Niagara Home Builders Association.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't actually reach out directly with the Real Estate Association. We have had some discussions with them, but there is that unique situation where the Hamilton Burlington Real Estate Association actually has Grimsby, and then there's a bit of a hole when it comes to Smithville, West Lincoln, of how you capture those homes. So in some of the reports, we're trying to get better data for that.
Okay, well, I think Niagara Home Builders does capture Grimsby and West Lincoln, and we're trying to get some of the Hamilton home builders to join the Niagara Home Builders Association. So thank you, that answers that question. The second one is when you speak of builders and developers, you're talking residential, commercial.
Through you, Madam Chair, there was a number of different groups that we reached out to. In section 2 of the report, it actually lists the people that responded to the homeowner or the builder and developer survey.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these groups have a more fulsome portfolio where they're also into commercial buildings as well. But the majority, I would say, were more focused on sort of that home building. And then there was different varieties too. Like there was higher density. I believe we talked to LJM, which you see on the QEW by Casablanca, which is into much higher density, all the way down to single detached.
Okay, so industrial was not included in this study at all?
No, through you, Madam Chair, the focus of this study was more about how do we get more people here. It was really derived out of the net new 10,000 people council strategic project that by 2018. Now that we've had the statistics brought in, we've actually exceeded that. We're around 16,000, which is great news. What we've also heard from some of our economists is you have a unique conundrum. Our Director of Economic Development could probably speak to this as well. When you have population, you'll have employment. So they're intrinsically linked. So by bringing more population here, there will be more employment eventually.
Right. They tend to be in the service industry if you're considering the retirees as the new population. I liked your discussion about bringing the younger generation, the millennial, the young professional, the young families, but you have to have jobs for them first. where with the seniors and the retirement, you don't have to have jobs, you just create the service job for, replacing the roof and cleaning the carpets and that kind of
And
job.
health.
So thank you for that answer. The next question is about the item 3. The report recommendation says make residential development a priority. 1C, allow denser townhome zoning for 16 to 18-foot townhome frontages, as well as for 25-foot to 30-foot small lot detached frontages. And then under next steps, we make a reference to planning and development services continually working to find creative solutions to move projects forward. And so my concern is that this logic is driving highly or intensive redevelopment.
Would you speak through the chair, please, when you're speaking, so we can catch all the...
Well,
Thank you.
okay. So my question to the presenter, Madam Chair.
Of course.
Is that, does this argument follow the intensification in the established neighborhood, where you take one detached residential lot and using this rationale to justify jamming 4 townhouses with 16-foot frontage on because we run into this pressure consistently in St. Catharines and the established neighborhoods, where the planning keeps coming up with arguments about why it is appropriate to jam 4 townhouses into a neighborhood where the lots are all single detached with 60-foot by 100-foot lots.
Yeah,
So my question
jamming may
is,
be a pejorative word, but could you restate your question?
squeeze
for
then?
Phil?
Would it be squeeze? So my question is, does your rationale and this survey justify extension of this recommendation? And I assume your recommendation is about when you're allowing new development, open field or brownfield or whatever, but new. And this argument does not extend to intensifying local neighborhoods. Is that a fair question, Madam Chair?
Mr. Lambert, can you answer that?
Through you, Madam Chair. I think Niagara has a lot of unique and authentic characters in many different communities. So there's appropriate locations for intensifications in your downtown. The secondary plans that we're doing for the GO stations, those are excellent examples of where we can provide many different housing opportunities for people that may not want the single family large yard being taken care of that, where they may be looking for what is my quickest way into the GTHA where my employment is. So I think the key is that we need to provide a variety at the right locations, and by working with local municipalities to create up-to-date secondary plans, which we're doing with the GO stations. That's going to provide these opportunities for these other areas. What happened is PMA has a lot of work in the GTHA, and they're seeing this type of development being promoted around these transit hubs. And when they came here, they were surprised to see the current stock didn't have this, but we're going to be getting there. There's always a zoning bylaw as well at the local municipality that needs to allow this to happen at the appropriate locations. We're not saying this needs to happen everywhere.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That the answer fits nicely with, St. Catharines' interest is really high-density downtown. And we have a developer made an attempt at this 16-foot townhouse frontages on Ontario Street and Welland Avenue. And that style took forever. It took 5 years, I think, to be sold. So even when the focus is on downtown where this intensity should be sold, it was a difficult market to, an excellent builder, but that was very difficult sell in the downtown urban core. So does your research and this survey continued argument that that is the approach to take even in the downtown core.
And it's important to remember here, Councillor, that this is not prescriptive. It's allowing for different possibilities. Mr. Lambert, do you want to go ahead?
Well, my concern is with the next steps mentioned in the report, Madam Chair, that say planning will make residential development a priority through customer service and finding creative solutions to move projects forward. And the creative solution has been too often in St. Catharines been squeezing 4 townhouses in a single residential lot in an established neighborhood.
Right.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It was excellent, Mr. Lambert. Number one, do we have a copy of this? I've seen a copy of the study and things of that sort.
It's all in your package.
That's in our agenda as of this afternoon, I suppose. Wasn't there this morning.
Oh, I'm through you, Madam Chair. I apologize. This the slide deck, the top 10.
Yes.
In true Letterman fashion, I just put it together within the last couple of days.
You and your team of writers
I can,
did it
definitely.
just this afternoon. I understand.
Oh, that's what you were looking for,
Yes.
the presentation?
Yes, yes.
We'll make sure that they.
Okay, very good. I
Good.
would like a
Thank
copy.
you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
certainly-
thought you meant the report itself.
No, I've certainly read the report and impressed. There are a number of very specific recommendations. Now, who's charged with the responsibility of following that up? In some ways, I look and say, well, yeah, the builder should get out there outside the GTA or out in the GTA or at least outside Niagara, the greater GTA, and that's their job. Get out there and sell Niagara because we want to make it a priority and all these wonderful things. Whose job is that? Is that ours, just like industrial or development is the responsibility of the region? Are we expected to form a team? Who's going to do these websites you're referencing? And all great recommendations, but I just don't want to put those on the shelf right now. Maybe you can respond to that.
I think the Director of Economic Development.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oakes.
Through Madam Chair, yeah, certainly in the 2017 budget, Economic Development added a work program essentially, which was to deal with the various projects, one being the Global Attractiveness Project file, one being this, some of the recommendations that come out of this program, and a variety of the under 35 project. And part of that program is to develop a bit of a marketing campaign on all of these initiatives that will be able to allow us to showcase Niagara and sort of some of these softer selling features to a wider variety. So we're trying to sell similar to what the builders are doing in Empire and the Toronto Life magazine. They're advertising the lifestyle. We're attempting to create a Why Niagara website that will be a bit of a landing page, which will have some of these types of stories. And we'll follow that through on our end with both the commercial and industrial portfolio. And hopefully our other partners, municipal partners or the realtors or the commercial brokers are also following through and utilizing that tool. So it's like a team effort of doing that. But we've been charged with trying to push that agenda
Okay,
forward.
so will I expect a report in a year as to how successful you were in this bit of, I'm not sure I like those words, bit of a marketing campaign? How aggressive should we be, and how does your budget reflect the aggressiveness of something so important as growth in Niagara?
Through Madam Chair, yeah, we'll definitely have it incorporated into all of our quarterly reports. It's not, we're not putting staff out there and charging into the Toronto marketplace, so it is a bit of a subtle sell when you talk about the different marketing materials, but we can track it. So the point of it is that we'll be able to provide some
nothing like hearing words like subtle sell. You'll never get me if it's a subtle sell. I have to be hit with a brick sometimes if you want to sell me some shoes. So that's why I wanted to know, to what level of aggression or enthusiasm is this going to represent? This is a $60,000 study that we put over here. Do we endorse the recommendations that have been presented to us, or do we accept that as, yeah, that's the recommendations and we'll take care of it along with some of our teammates developers or whomever, it just seems a little loose for me in terms of actual direction, measurement. I want it back here within a year, and I want to know exactly what was done. Never mind just the quarterly reports. I want a hard copy of what we've been doing. I'll take that as you wish. I'm not allowed to direct, but I did ask, should we endorse the recommendations carried in this very expensive report?
Is that a question?
Yes, it was.
And the question again,
With no
please?
amendment.
And yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
ask the question again, please.
Are we going to endorse the recommendations of this report? I think there's 5 or 6 of them. Is that right, Mr. Lamb?
Yes, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. What the recommendation for this report is that actually we receive it, we share it with all local municipalities and the Niagara home builders. There's several recommendations in here which, maybe not everybody agrees with, but the point was we actually, we contacted 2,400 new homeowners and got valuable data back of like what drove them. We talked to focus groups as well, builders and developers, did a comparison. So all of that information actually is now being shared across the region as well. So it's good data. The other point, through you, Chair, I would like to make is that we really have a lot of different community stakeholders that are all trying to achieve the same thing. Brock and Niagara College are trying to attract the younger demographics to come to Niagara, and we're hoping that they're going to be able to stay, make businesses, and increase our economic prosperity.
Okay, I guess the answer is a no. We're not going to actually endorse. I appreciate that everybody's doing the job, but that's usually when the job isn't being done. And I'm not being critical here in any way. I just want to ensure, and I want boundaries on this so I know how to measurement, how to look at it, see what's actually expected of the region, the development committee. I heard references to, where was it here? Expedited approvals. I heard that when I got into politics in 1982. And here we are, talking about it. Yeah, it was just before the region started, I did. What are the major impediments to that? Because that's something that's been ongoing. I know certainly the wheels are supposed to go slow sometimes. The OMB, things of that sort, that's problematic. But are there local municipalities? Are they trouble getting reports from the region, or in the NPCA, I know does some, and those sorts of things? How can it be expedited?
All right, we're going to have our CAO address that question, or part of it.
Through Chair to Councilor Marshall, first to your first points. So we have these studies and they're forming our baseline into our data. So now we're establishing our baseline. So where we're at, what is the current survey? We take this information, and as the director has referenced, we share it with other organizations. But more importantly, we feed it into the economic development. So when they are going out there looking for potential employers coming to town, this is the information that they want, some accurate information, that's timely, what is the workforce, what are the demographics, where's your housing at, because when they come in, they need that interaction with the data so they know they can make an informed decision. So we incorporate this data into economic development, and they use it in their material when they're going out there. But we share also.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't want to take too much time either. How do we improve?
The second
Or how do
point.
we expedite proposals? Where are we maybe falling short by at least the perception of the builders?
The second point on the expedited review, there are two fundamental thrusts that the region of Niagara has implemented in working with our local area municipalities. The first is the concept of pre-consultation. That's working. So we get all the agencies together at the pre-consultation stages. So if you have a potential development or you have a bona fide development and you're putting it forward, you're hitting all the agencies at the start. Then in our economic development under Director Oakes, he has an expediter who pushes it through. And to complement that, in the planning side, there's also an expediter. So depending what the issue is it a planning issue or is it information issue, we have expediters in place to push it through.
That sounds great, and so that remark really shouldn't be there. We're expediting and as much as we can, so that may be a misperception of how we do business, and maybe that's worth correcting. You talked about going to the local municipalities. What happens when you go to the local municipalities, staff see it, and the likelihood of the politicians who give some direction in policy these days may have an impact on it. Are you going to make presentations to each of the local area municipalities, well beyond just handing the data to someone? It's not really a team until the politicians get and see some real enthusiasm going on.
Through you, Madam Chair. At the start of this project, we met with all the EDOs, the area planners, as well as the CAOs to introduce this project and the genesis of it. We've shared the results with them and the presentations along the way. To your point about expediting approvals, we have
we're on the politician side.
Okay.
And whether you're making presentations, but I do want you to go back to the expediting approvals.
The more we can do to be development ready. So the example of what we're doing as a district plan at Prudhome's. So we're updating a secondary plan so that you don't have a developer coming in that has to now do an official plan amendment, a zoning amendment, and then a subdivision application. So by being development ready, that means, you know, investing in up-to-date secondary plans, your zoning, and then being able to receive and having a plan and a framework for a strong vision and being proactive for planning for what great communities you want to have across Niagara.
Okay, I thank you for that, but are you going to make presentations to the local municipalities soon? Because they're the one that ultimately do the budgets. And they're going to say, do you want money to your secondary plans need updating? And we have to be at the ready when this happens. That happens sometimes from the top down. I'm asking if you intend, and I'm trying to encourage you to attend, because I'm so impressed with this, and I think it's good for our entire region. But just, I'm so fearful of doing studies. We all know what we should do, and we end up, something really important comes up tomorrow, and I'm not going to be able to do it. So I hope, and I can't direct, as I said, that you do make presentations to each of the local municipalities and encourage them to work on their secondary plans, because they're the primary players there. And I was so impressed with all of it. I have other questions, but I won't bore my colleagues with more. So please carry on, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor. I understand you're very enthused by this, but how do we follow it through? Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate the presentation and the work. Just to the slide deck, I wondered if, when I first saw the first slide, number 10, I was confused, but then it was clarified. So maybe the presenter will want to
Number 10.
clarify. It looked like it was 10.91%
Yes.
instead of 91%. So I was concerned at the beginning.
10.
Right there, 10.91% of homeowners surveyed said they left. So quite a difference. Anyways, I appreciate the David Letterman approach, however. Just to build on what Councillor Tim said, I think this should be circulated to the Niagara real estate boards, board and or whatever the next board is over if it covers part of us, Hamilton board, and perhaps that's a friendly amendment, Madam Chair.
Right.
I recall a presentation that we received from the real estate board. So not the home builders. Home builders are building new homes. The real estate board are selling those old homes that people are moving into the new homes, et cetera. And they're still getting people from Toronto, et cetera, all around to move into Niagara into those older homes, the old stock. So I think it'd be important for them to see this as well. Interesting, I thought we were gonna have the discussion here, we're talking about time is money and working together on development. Councillor Marshall sort of spoke about this when talking about the what I took as the memorandum of understanding, and I think that's the reason why we put that memorandum together 10 years ago and renewed it, et cetera. So I think as we look at the memorandum of understanding and we want this one window approach or this one approach, I think it's important. You know, if it's wet and green, then it should, one body should comment on it as opposed to two, which is, I think, the direction, unfortunately, that we're headed. So I think we should keep that in mind as we look at that MOU at our next meeting. I thought it'd be here now. The one question I have out of this thing, and I know that this was brought up at budget, and there was some money there, and it was removed. I made the motion to remove it. But it does talk in here about having a spot for developers at the region to hang their hat or something. I don't know. I guess my question is, well, let me preface it this way. My understanding is that when somebody wants to develop somewhere, they don't start here. They start in Lincoln, they start in St. Catharines, they start in Niagara Falls, etc. They don't actually come to the region, I hate to say it, unless they have to. And that the approach that we've taken with the memorandum of understanding and with the, I forget what it's called, the pre-consultation
The
piece,
pre-consultation process?
is
right.
that staff go to the municipalities to meet with the developers, to work on the process. Staff from the NPCA have gone there, other people go there, et cetera, and it's kind of a one-stop shop at each of the locations. In Pelham, it's once every 2 weeks on a Thursday, whatever it is, right? And in other municipalities, it's more frequent. Was there am I wrong in understanding that? And was there a misunderstanding in the development community because the region was asking the question? They need a spot to hang their hat? Would they be as happy to having a red chair or a yellow chair or a green chair like they have in the banks and hang their hat in the area municipality offices?
Through you, Madam Chair. I think where this was coming from is, my understanding was PMA, their experience is that there's typically land brokers that identify parcels. One of the things we've heard is to gain that interest, we may need to bundle parcels to have a big enough project to attract a larger developer. So this is their suggestion to say, once you, if you're able to gain that connection with the brokers and identify larger parcels, this may be an opportunity to have them more engaged. So we engaged the land brokers on the industrial and commercial side. There was a meeting just this September with them, and it was the 4th annual one. But what they found was on the residential side, which is something they're perhaps more used to in their area of the GTA, they didn't see that here. So that was their unique suggestion or solution. You're right, however, about the pre-consultation process. It does start with the local municipality.
Yeah.
And the region does go there and provides a service.
Okay, thanks very much. I know a bunch of years ago, there used to be space specifically in economic development to do that. I haven't kept track of where Mr. Oakes' office is and whether folks interested in that type of thing are able to meet there. You know, I consider maybe, Councilor Marshall said, can this come back with some specifics? Maybe that's the location for it in that economic development office, because that's essentially, as I see, what they're doing. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. We probably had this question before when the presentation was first presented months ago, but I noticed the sample size is relatively small. 16% responded to the actual 2,226 surveys that went out. Is that representative? Is that a good enough representation to get the data that we need?
Through you, Madam Chair, believe it or not, that's actually a very good response rate.
That's all I need to know. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other question,
Yes.
piggybacking on Councilor Marshall's enthusiasm for the marketing. So are we talking about a marketing plan that this council will see? And what are the timelines on that? And then I'm going to assume then the marketing details will be about traditional marketing, print media, radio, spots. I mean, is that the kind of marketing that we're talking about?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's opportunity. Right now, we're just developing the plan and the strategy, and it's really social media based in particular, and whether or not we have, what other sort of media we use will be dependent on budget and number of. Again, the key to a lot of this is making sure that it's not just us telling the story, it's the partners, and to make that marketing resonate and to be a real story, it needs to come from real people as well, and within who've experienced the whatever we're trying to say.
So how do you determine what the budget should be?
Through you, Madam Chair. Effectively, what we would do is we would budget for what we think the regional portion would be. Then it's a sales job on our end to try to get other partners to come to the table. When you factor in social media and when you factor in targeted social media campaigns, it can be quite expensive. You could get very quickly into the millions of dollars depending on the market that you're looking at. So you have to be careful on that, and you really have to define who the market you're trying to market to. So that's where it really comes down to bringing the right stakeholders together and trying to leverage what others are spending in the marketing.
So just last question, Madam Chair. So those details will be coming back at some point that we could actually see what a media buy costs, if it's going to be traditional, non-traditional platforms, and we'll have a say in moving that initiative forward.
Through you, Madam Chair, essentially, yes, we will have something.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dart. Thank you, Councillor Height.
Yes, through the presenter, you brought up one slide, and if you go down about 3 or 4, the delay is more important than reducing development charge. Can you just remind us of that again? Because I'm sure some of us really like that number 7 before council, so they can all see that before Thursday's council meeting regarding development charges. And that's why it's somewhat critical to make sure we get a copy of that sent to us. Now, someone brought up about, are you going to present this? Obviously, we should be presenting it to the economic development officers when they meet, or the CAOs. I don't know if it's important enough to be going from city to city to city. I think getting to the key people in the communities, and those would be 2 groups that meet regularly, that if they see this kind of presentation, they might then take it and use it to their best interest as well. Great presentation. As far as marketing goes, I can go back about 20 odd years ago. City of St. Catharines had a marketing campaign at the wrong time in Toronto. But about a week or 2 ago, I saw in the Toronto Star that I get every week on the Saturday, one of the developers in West Lincoln was speaking about Smithville being the hub of Niagara. So we want that kind of, this information going to the developers so they can market Niagara for us, because they're the ones that are going to put money in their pockets and obviously then put money in our pockets. It's a ripple effect. I don't know if we have to spend the money. If we give them this good information, I'm sure they'll spread the news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Height? No.
I'm not Councillor Height. We have the same hairstyle.
I know, it's very confusing. Sorry,
No.
Councillor Lucian.
So we're talking about marketing Niagara's real estate market. I just want to get one point across. HomeSense magazine this past year has declared Thorold as having the best climate/weather in all of Canada over the last year. So there's a big marketing point right there.
And you did it. All thanks to you. All right, is that it, Councillor? Oh, thank you. It was a very good one. Philip, thank you very, very much for that. Could I have a mover and seconder for the report, please? Report 44. Councillor Height, Councillor Luciani. Questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. I believe we're at the end of our agenda, except for other business. Is there any other business? Seeing none of that, our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, November 8, 2017 at 1 p.m. in this chamber. And there being no further business, yes. Yes.
Construction on the Peace Bridge. The Peace Bridge is now reduced to 2 lanes, starting, I believe, November 2nd or November 3rd, and it will be that way till May of 2018. So I thought I'd bring that forward, and they tell me that it's not going to be a huge burden, but restricted to 2 lanes because of construction.
Right. Thank you for that. Sorry? Yeah, can you, Councillor Annunziata, can you put some announcement of that sort to the clerk so they can include it in our, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all very much.